Hello, and welcome to this IG Live with my lovely partner in crime, Mina I Do. This is our fourth time going live this year, and we're going to be talking about pleasure. So let me get Mina on. Okay. Yay. Hello.
Hi, I can hear you, but I need to turn my. There we go.
I'm like, ooh, this mysterious entry.
Oh, and balancing my phone is a whole thing.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm hearing myself echo. Are you hearing
Right.
that?
No, I'm going to take my headset off.
Okay.
Is is that better?
Let me see. Okay, yeah, that is much better. I was like, oh no, I don't think I could do this if I'm hearing an echo. I don't know why. The tech. Hello,
I was trying to
everyone.
be all headsetty and techie, and it didn't work.
Oh,
So that teaches me.
you know, I don't really know myself, but I do have my phone connected to and mic, and sometimes that does things as well. Well, hello everyone. These
Hi,
might be people you know, Mina. Your people.
hooray! Ma Kamala Devi, the Sage Grassroots. I don't know all of them, but I hope I will know you soon. Sarah, Moksha, and Adita, I know. Lovely to see you on here.
Yay! I have to say you're so good. I learned from you with your how you share your stories and all the things. It's really good.
Can I just say?
Yes, please.
Because I like to look at my hair. Look at my hair, though. It's just like random, like random parts in my
Oh,
hair.
love
This
it.
headset life. This headset life is not
Oh, the
fair to
headset
my
life,
hair.
the headset life, and the hair life.
The headset not fair to the afros.
Oh no.
Um, um, yeah, lately I've been finding real enjoyment in sharing, and it's direct um, result of the ongoing trauma resolution work
Wow,
I've, I've been doing. It's just been like,
amazing.
and learning business, and also I have a kid, so there's a lot of things happening, but
Absolutely.
the trauma resolution work is helping me like release some shame, like remember who I was before all the conditioning, allowing me to sort of let go of false representations of what I thought I should be looking like and doing on social media, and just
Right,
transparently speaking and allowing people to receive me
right.
regardless of what it looks like. Or like today I was in a client call,
Yeah.
and can I just show you these?
Ooh, I love it, love it, love it.
And at one time I feel like subconsciously I did not let myself get my nails done as I really wanted to, because I felt like it would be distracting for clients.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Because we have these preconceived, like, this is what it looks like to be professional, to be holding space, to be working with clients. And yeah, I love
Yeah.
that you're letting your nails and I think was it the last time you came right out of the salon and yes, yes, yes.
Let there were ideas of what I thought, you know, practitioners or like, you know, trauma people or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever should look like and
Yeah.
appear like and be like. And it's just
Yeah.
like, well, fuck that. Like, this is me and I'm allowed to be me, you know, and do
That's
whatever the fuck
right.
I want. So,
Exactly. And we both follow Simone Soul, and I feel like that's the message coming loud and clear there is just like be yourself, show up
right, right,
as
right,
you
right.
are.
And like, I've known that as a concept for so long, and I even thought I was doing it for a long time. But
Hmm.
once you start the trauma resolution work, you just keep going deeper and unearthing and letting go of
Hmm.
layers of conditioning. And it's not a concept, but it's happening at a body level. And so
Hmm.
just time, you just start noticing, and you just get more and more comfortable, either being uncomfortable, being yourself,
Yeah.
just with being your
Yeah. Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
and knowing that you'll be received or you won't, and either way is fine. Perfect.
Hmm. Hmm. Mm. Yes. That feels so good. That feels so good. And I'm feeling that as well as you share that like I'm in my own like process of that, but it's as you share, I'm like, how much is still like this is how it should be, or this is, yeah, I think there's a lot to kind of spiral into, get deeper into the layers. Hmm.
It's definitely a journey, you know, definitely, and it can take time, and that's as it should be. And it took time to get to where we are. You know, it takes time to unlearn so much. So it's totally okay,
Yes,
to be where we are and learn as we go.
that's right. Oh, so pleasure. Our pleasure musings, and I think I wrote grief. Outcomes, grief. Like I know you've been asking for questions, and I don't know where you feel like going first.
I just like so. First of all, hi, Sonali. I feel like I launched right into the all the things.
We did. I didn't even do like an intro this time. I'm like, oh, it's our fourth live. Hey, let me bring her on. I have your beautiful intro somewhere, but not right here. So it was like,
People can click onto my Instagram and see if
that's
they.
right. That's right.
It's fine. Um, so you know what? I am someone who's been on this journey of pleasure for a while now,
Hmm.
and I feel like I'm someone. I framed this talk like when I spoke about it as like pleasure, like 101 or pleasure
Yeah.
for beginners, because I feel like I my pleasure journey started at a massive deficit, if you will.
Hmm.
So when I say that, I mean like I did not have an aware pleasure was outside of my awareness.
Mm.
And what I had and sometimes it's wording, it's semantic. So I knew that some things made me feel good
Yeah.
occasionally, right?
Hmm.
Um, and like I've learned so much from starting at a deficit. I call it a deficit just for an easy way for people to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when I started, I was like I saw people talking about pleasure, and mostly I started with the whole sexual pleasure piece because it's very apparent, right? When you're not experiencing sexual pleasure, you're very like aware. Um,
Yes.
or you can be very aware, I should say. Uh, and you may know that something doesn't feel as good as you want it to feel.
Yeah.
I'll put it like that. Um, and so I was looking for the healing, looking for the pleasure, the pleasure piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But when you're at a deficit, you know, someone's saying, "Oh, go outside and eat some strawberries." It doesn't make any sense. it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like the
Oh,
things I was looking for just weren't meeting me where I was, because so many of us are starting at a deficit,
yeah.
massive, huge deficit. And just to get to like a baseline or a
Mm-hmm.
foundation,
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole journey just to get to there. And then it's like when we understand what pleasure can be, we're able to access it in different ways, and maybe not just we have one pathway. So for me, growing up, I didn't see pleasure like modeled. Like, like feeling good was at the bottom of the list. Do you know what I mean? Feeling
Ab-
good wasn't a thing,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So like
It's not a
where
priority at all. Yeah.
it's not a priority at all, right? And so like it's just you're just in survival. You
Yeah.
know, my parents are immigrants. There
Yeah.
was three of us. You know, they both work two jobs. Like pleasure is not a thing. So if pleasure hasn't been a thing for you growing up,
Yeah.
you don't know, you know. And so, but the body will always look for ways of feeling good. And so my way of looking for ways of feeling good was through food, especially in like my culture. Food is like, yeah, eat, you know, great, eat all the foods, eat all the food. Oh, but don't eat too much because it's like it became it became this weird thing, right? And so
I can relate to that so much. I just have to say I could definitely like eat. Oh, but wait. Not that. Or not all
right,
that.
exactly. And so already from a very early age, like pleasure was I had this one source,
Yeah.
which in itself isn't the best, you know. Thank God my body looked for a source, because
Yeah.
if I didn't have food, I don't know what I would have done. But only having one source made it very narrow.
You mean the
And so
food? The food was the one.
yeah,
Yeah.
food was my one source of pleasure, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like I was just like, because it's my one source, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
pleasure
Mm-hmm.
is pleasure.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's sanctioned, but not sanctioned within a range.
Yeah.
So then it started to get shamed, and so pleasure started to be shamed, and so it started really, really early on. Right, these patterns start so early on.
Yeah.
But now I understand that as someone who's been on this journey, it's like, oh, I see. When I'm able to have more source access to pleasure from different sources, you start to build a foundation that you can sort of like then move from. And then it's like, oh, the awareness of how nice the strawberry tastes
Mm.
is a thing now to me.
Yeah.
Whereas unless you have some baseline, it's like you're living in two different worlds
Mm-hmm.
completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what your question was, but those are the words that came into my
I love I love being on these lives with you. It's
mind. Hope
like
they're helpful to
full
someone.
permission. It's just like be here and let's just see where it goes. No, but this is great. I am I feel myself just like nodding along. I know that we have had different backgrounds, different experiences, all that, but I really resonate with the deficit of pleasure, B, the low priority of pleasure. Like it just was never a thing. It's like do your work, where get your grades, get the thing, like it was just also from an immigrant family. And now that you mention it, yeah, I think the only form of like I'm gonna say sensual pleasure, meaning like from our sensual, our senses, right, from our senses, from sensual, yeah, senses, from our senses, it really was food. And my mother like that's one thing she loved to cook. And my mother was someone who she is alive still, like, but she baked cakes. She loved to bake in addition to like cook. So we got amazing birthday cakes and like very decorated. And like I remember a cake that had the cake was the skirt, and then it had this doll in the top, and then the whole thing was like with little balls and all the things. So we got like, this was, yeah, pleasure. It was like it felt so good, and it was encouraged. But also, as you say, like I relate to that too. It was eat, 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 but then there was also this, but don't gain too much weight. Don't eat too much, you know. So there was a restraint in there. There was a like, don't go all out with with the
Right.
food. But yeah, I really relate to that. I really relate to that. That was, and I think that's what, just as an aside, that the food thing was so complicated for me. My relationship to food was so complex my whole life. It probably still is, because it was
Same.
so tied to this, oh, eat, and it's nourishment and it's enjoyment, and this is the one area that you can really, enjoy. And then this whole thing with weight. So that's another topic, but I just noticing as I'm talking that was there, this really strange, kind of a dynamic that was happening. And aside from that, for me, like the pleasure journey, hello Sarah, um, really came much more recently, like in the last 5 years or 5+ years for me, just to really make it a priority, go there, so yeah, I can very much relate to starting at a deficit and being like, what? Like, we can do this? How do we start? And what's this about?
Yes, for sure. And I just want to, one piece I want to, oh, hi, there's some people. Paola,
Yeah,
Paola
Paola.
Contra,
See,
hi, Sorry22,
sorry.
hi, and Sarah M. Fisher, hi. I just want to say, even though the pleasure and the weight piece
Yeah.
is like a whole thing on its own, I
Oh.
do wonder, like the connection, because the shaming of pleasure starts really early.
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's food,
Yeah.
right? Enjoy, but don't enjoy too much.
Right.
And I definitely know that there's links to then how we allow ourselves pleasure or not, or
Yeah.
the shame we have
Yes.
over allowing ourselves to feel good or to eat
Yes.
or to, there's that cap, that
Yes.
shaming that we take on board for ourselves.
Yes. And it's right there in the words, right? Like the idea of a guilty pleasure, like sweets or something decadent. That's often termed a guilty pleasure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can have it, but you're gonna feel bad afterwards. It's almost tied into the process, which is like, that's interesting. That's not
Right,
really
exactly.
encouraging pleasure, is it?
This is the thing, and like it just makes me feel like when we have access to different, a broad source of pleasure, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I find that things tend to find their natural, what do you call it, watermark. You know what I mean? We're
Mm-hmm.
not looking for our pleasure from one channel. We have like access to it all around, and things start to fall into place in terms of how much, how little we allow it. So the thing about shading myself for food is stopped now because I have access to different forms of pleasure
Yeah.
that are filling the gaps for me, and I haven't got to just look to food and eat all the food.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to eat all the food, I eat all the food, and then it's fine. You know what I mean? Because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I found a balance with it. There's not shame there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's definitely a journey. So yeah, the pleasure in food thing is a whole thing that I often work with clients. A lot of my clients come
Yeah.
and they have this, and I also personally have had this in my life. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I can just 1,000%. It's so funny when people do that. Like, there is a maximum of 100. You can't really have more than that. But I'm like fully agreeing. Fully agreeing
Yeah.
in that. And so I'm curious now. whenever that is for you, for me, and for others, where we move beyond food as the experience of pleasure, and what might be the entry into that. I'm just saying it. I don't really, I have to even think of the answer for myself. I don't really know. But, like, what is like what do you think is like the opening, or maybe it is food, but like the opening, the gateway into more, a more permissive experience of pleasure? That's what's coming like.
Mm-hmm. More permissive experience of pleasure. So what's coming? It's for me. It's the embodiment piece allowed me to feel my own aliveness and
Mm-hmm.
vitality
Mm-hmm.
um, that I was getting from food.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was all there already,
Yeah.
aliveness, vitality. But
Yeah.
because of, childhood challenges,
Yeah.
childhood trauma, all the things, I wasn't allowing myself to feel my body.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
of course I wasn't, because it was painful, right?
Yeah.
So going on that journey allowed myself to feel the depth and the excitement and all the things
Mm-hmm.
in a way that felt safe over time. And I didn't necessarily I no longer had to turn to food for that kind of hit of something, because there was the
Mm-hmm.
depth was here.
Yeah.
And it's a slow process, right? It's a slow
Yeah.
process. But then over time, the embodiment piece, getting in touch with this in ways that feel safe, um, opens the gateway
Mm-hmm.
so that you can notice other forms of pleasure. You can notice anything
Mm-hmm.
in the first place, right? Because oftentimes we're numb,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't necessarily know we're numb. But then once we start to be able to feel our bodies, that allows us access to other types of pleasure,
Yeah.
and we can acknowledge it and experience it as pleasure.
Yeah.
So for me, the body, I guess, the
Mm-hmm.
body was uh, the access point.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm thinking for myself. I know for myself in my own journey, because I could say that, it was really this like 5+ years. I really wasn't at all. If anything, it was food and maybe like movement, like some like exercise of some sort that of course gave a good feeling, but I didn't actually think of it as pleasure. I really didn't
Right,
like think of it that way, but I'm just thinking of it now,
right,
that
yeah.
was maybe another experience. But I'm thinking for me, it was this place that I got to, having done this, a process that came about 5+ years ago of shedding, because like I left a career, I left a home that I had been in for many years, like a country I'd been in for most of my life, um, belongings. Like I was in this like shedding, and I had found myself, or I mean, I went to Sri Lanka, where my parents are from, and I was trying to do something there. I was like trying to focus on Ayurveda, like it was still healing related. But then when I kind of left that for a moment, because it was a beautiful place, but I needed something different. I was in a space where where it felt honestly very uncomfortable because I wasn't taught. My identity was like, what? Where? Who are you? What are you doing now? You're not your job. You're not your home. You're not your anything with your belongings or friends. Because I kind of moved myself. There was a space that came that then allowed this. Oh, I wasn't even thinking pleasure. I was thinking sexuality. I was kind of thinking of it more like, oh, this is something I haven't explored, and this led me to look for opportunities, and then a teacher that I was doing something online with. But it really, it actually, that's interesting. I don't know what role my body had. I don't have a clear understanding of like what was my body and what was my mind kind of deciding that. But it did eventually like come to like, let me take action. Let me do this little course. It was like an 8-week or something online course. And that was more like, okay, my mind finally saying, okay, let's do this. And then it was in the course that I had to connect to my body and like figure out, which was, that's a long process, but just it's the start of like, oh, yeah, like I have these sensations in my body, like this is important. Something I hadn't ever given any really a lot of priority to at all. So it kind of came. But what I'm thinking of is the space that stopped me for a moment to not be doing and not be like, I'm doing this, I'm getting this education degree, this job, and doing, and just to kind of remove myself. So then it was like an opening came, which I'm grateful for. I still can't tell you. I don't know how much I was keeping a journal or any of that at that time to go back to even look at, wait, what really happened there? But I know that there was a shedding process of like, let me get me extricating myself from a place that I had gotten myself really kind of embedded.
So you created the space. Somehow the space was created.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one reason why I find, especially for like, well, as I'm just thinking of myself, but I'm thinking of like women or female bodied, um, being in a transition, being in any kind of transition, job, vocation, relationship, like when you're leaving something and you're not quite into something else, there is this space that can come where you can start to, I think we've talked about this, I'm sure. I know that in another conversation. Um, yeah, yeah, that's just what's coming as far as like an entry, like just any allowing like, oh, let me focus on something that I haven't before.
And so, like, in that sense, you're talking about the, the like, what am I saying? The kind of, not the catalyst, but what led to the space being like, there was a moment in time where you decided you were intentional
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
like,
yeah.
um,
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah.
mm, yeah. And I think there's so many different ways it can happen.
That's
Hearing
right.
you say that is really interesting. Yeah, hearing you say that's so interesting. And then I had a client call. There's something about what I noticed with clients is it can take like we kind of beat ourselves up about either not doing the work or and not doing the work essentially. But what I see time and time again is that it takes a build up of the resource, a build up of conditions that must equal or even be more than the challenges we faced before we're able to actually go to those places we want to go to. And so I feel like in the online, sexuality and sensuality, there's all this like marketing of pleasure.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a journey,
Yeah.
and it can take conditions to be right, and it can take multiple things to be in place before it might be the right time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually the body's like, that's the natural way things get healed, right? We have to have enough resource
Yes.
to be able to meet those places that we want to go to.
Oh, yes. I love that. I love the way you express that. Yeah. Yeah. And as you say that, it does bring me to consider one of the things we had talked about in our back and forth before this, about that relationship with grief and pleasure, and like how these could be connected. And I'm just going to say perhaps that the grief, because that's so pervasive, like pleasure, we were just talking about, we don't hear about it, we're not encouraged about it, we're not like, it's not like, definitely in my life, speak for myself, like that's not ever been like encouraged. But grief came in all kinds of ways. I mean, it came through loss, and it came through almost like perhaps a grieving at times of like the life that wasn't lived or something, um yeah, there's more to say, but I'm just wondering what has been brewing on your end about that.
This is such a tender topic. And like, in terms of grief, as much as it might be hard to hear, there's not a shortcut. There's not a shortcut. And the more we're able to practice being with resource, having a foundation of resource, and this is why I talk about pleasure as medicine, the more we're able to build those foundations of things that feel good, being connected to things that feel good, doing things in our life that make us feel good. And it might not even be good, it might just be like doing things in our life that help us feel neutral. If there's, a lot going on, being neutral might just be relief for a moment. The more we can build up those pathways in times of lesser challenge, the more we'll have access to those resources in times of challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not a shortcut through grief.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I'm sorry if this is hard to hear. And building up resources can be really useful to be able to be with as we're with the grief. I think for a long time I didn't have access to grief. I didn't know what grief could feel like. We're not like a grief. We're not what's the word? Taught about grief. We're not taught to deal with everyday grief. I think we have an idea of like loss of a loved one or loss when someone dies. We have an idea of that. But even so, we're still scratching the surface
Mm-hmm.
with that, right? You might get like a day or two's leave from work to do your grieving, and then you come back. We have we as a culture, we don't know. We don't fathom the depth
Mm-hmm.
of how to be with grief, right? And then everyday grief for the life not lived, grief for things you've done, grief for things you haven't done. We carry everyday grief with you. And so the thing about the grief and the pleasure is once we can start to do the embodiment piece, we start to, and ideally we do it safely and we do it in small doable pieces. We begin to feel the subtleties of things, and you might be able to, over time, feel into it might be a journey for you if you're not in touch with grief, to be like, oh, this is what my grief might feel like right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is a feeling I can't name, but it feels like this. And over time we start to be able to name, what things are in our body. If you're someone who hasn't had that mirrored or to you as a child, or had your feelings respected, you might just have no access to naming emotions or feelings and sensations. But once you can be, it's almost like being able to be with all the things, including the grief, allows you also to be able to be with the pleasures. And there's this depth of feeling that comes with the trauma resolution work, with the embodiment work over time, that allows us to be with all the things. And so even though there's not a shortcut to grief, it's a part of being human.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of being human. And if we're able to practice with someone, with someone else, or co-regulate with the trees or with nature or with plants or with your friend, or with, who can hold space for us while we feel,
Mm-hmm.
we start to get in touch with all the things, the pleasure and the grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a question actually about, should I answer this question now, or maybe
Sure.
how to find pleasure whilst being with grief? And I would say the thing about practicing feeling good in times when you can, so you have access to it, and it can become a foundation in your life, is really useful. And if you're feeling grief, it might be really hard, and it's part of being human, and it's okay. And we don't have to reach for the pleasure straight away. You might need time to be with the grief, and allow yourself to be with that before it's time for pleasure to come. And it might also be like, some people might feel like they stay in the grief longer than they have to. And so know that it might be, this is depending on everyone's has a different experience, right?
Yes.
Some people might stay with it longer than they need to. And so it's like, okay, maybe it might be helpful for me to actually look for something that feels good right now.
Mm-hmm.
Only you will know. You will know if you're circumventing the grief by reaching for the pleasure, and you will know if it's the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like finding that right timing for you,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing the process to unfold as it will. Mm-hmm. And generally, I think as the grief moves through, the time for the new, maybe slightly better feeling will come.
Yes.
Naturally. Yeah. And so being able to be with the grief, if you have a movement practice, or if you do something that allows you to be with it, not override it with something else that's more high stimulation, but find safe ways to be with it, maybe with a friend. It can be really useful for allowing that to move to the next thing.
Yes.
Come into your experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt a bit edgy to say, some people stay in the grief, but everyone experiences grief differently, and everyone has different types of grief.
Yes. Yes. And it can feel comfortable. I mean, the grief can feel comfortable. Hello, Shiana. He said something that's just coming to me, and that's really a lot based on my own experience of just like, for me, as you know, there was a traumatic loss, like at a certain point, and I wasn't ready. I you know, it kind of was just happened, and I definitely wasn't able to like be in the grief, and I needed to like keep going because, like you say, our a lot of times our lives, our education, work, whatever it is, like doesn't allow for very much time for any of us to grieve. But I do think there was something that broke wide open with it, you know, because it just happened so suddenly, and it just, you know, like there's no choice but to at least contemplate, why are we here? What is the meaning of life? You know, like all that kind of existential stuff. Why did this happen? What's this about? Like all of that kind of stuff. Um, the stuff, all those things came up, I think. And then I know for me, again, I'm just talking about my own experience, I guess, at this point, but I channeled it into, I'm going to do this certain career. I'm going to help people that were struggling, because it was at the time my brother took his life. So it was like, I'm going to go and help children and youth that are struggling with these things. It felt very good. Like it felt like this, I'm going to make my life be purposeful in this way. But when I look back on it all, I realized, like, gosh, that was all this grief and then survivor guilt and all kinds of things that went into that. None of which had to do with pleasure. Really, none of it. It was like, I have to do this, you know, and this is how I'm going to channel the grief and make my life a certain way. So as you're mentioning, it's like, yes, there was over time, many years, I was attending to it. There was a buildup of resource. I'd also already explained, like leaving everything and getting myself into a place where there was an opening. And now it could be about, what do I like, more intentionally, it could be about what do I do, or how do I experience more pleasure? Like I just kind of close this little big chapter of grief, and then the reaction to the grief and the survivor guilt, and like, I got to do this, I've got to do that, you know, and then kind of hone in more on like, what what do I desire? What do I want in my life? How do I want to feel? So that's so personal to me, but I'm just sharing that, like, as I'm considering grief and pleasure, I do feel like it was, in a larger scheme, very related in some ways, and a way of like, after healing a bit, you know, which healing is messy, and there was not some linear thing, and it didn't happen in a short time. It was very all over the place. But in this healing process, almost like giving a permission to leave the grief, like not leave it fully, but to allow in something else that could feel better, that could feel more resourceful. That's what's coming to me of my own journey.
I'm sure, like, it's definitely a journey, right? Definitely a journey. And this is one of the things I'm just like, when I started out,
Yeah.
you think it's this path, and it's like, it's just this journey. And when I'm on social media and Instagram, people saying do this or do that or
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and it's like, everyone fuck off, because I'm on my journey, and like my process is my process, and I'm not going to beat myself up anymore for not being here or not being there. And it's just, the body will always like have its process,
Yeah.
and whether we understand it at the time or not, that is exactly as it is to be. It's always going through its own process, and it knows the best way to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you feel like you've been spinning in the same place, there's going to be value in that spinning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're ready and there's enough resource to come out of that spinning, there is help available.
Yes.
But, when we're bashing ourselves or shaming ourselves, that serves no one.
Right.
And something else I'm going to share publicly on the Instagram live. Edgy, I'm being edgy. I'm
Edgy.
pushing my edges. So I said edges. Just pushing my edges. As you were speaking about, we're talking about grief and pleasure, there's always been this desire in me to like have God sex, if that makes sense.
God.
Like God sex, like feel God through sex.
Oh, God, sex. Yes.
God sex. And what comes as you're speaking about grief and pleasure, it feels like that being able to feel the grief is also allowing you to feel able to feel the more ecstatic ranges of life experience, right?
Yes.
Because they're both so potent and they feel like, I don't know the word, they feel like kind of, I don't maybe they feel like extremes in some way. And you, as you say, like grief can like break you wide open. And you know, sex can break you wide open. They feel like on the same pole, opposite ends of the same spectrum, right? So there's something about pleasure and grief that's like feels like it's linked. And I'm sure it is. It feels like, yeah, opposite ends of the thing. And the deeper you go, the higher you go.
Yes. 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 Yes, so much. Yes, I love that kind of analogy, and I feel like I use that too in a similar way, if, in terms of how pleasure, the experience of pleasure, can expand the container of that we're holding in our bodies, that holding the emotions, such that this is how I think of like pleasure as a resource, is that it's expanding the container so that then the grief, the sadness, the sorrow, the all that, it isn't so overwhelming, it's not so overpowering and overtaking, because there's a bigger space there, if you will.
So pleasure to as expanding the container to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that perspective before. And I think that's, and as I think of my own personal experience, it's for me, the people say pleasure is medicine. You know, when it was outside my awareness, I was like, what are people saying? Like, what does that mean? Pleasure is medicine. Whoa. But now I understand it as and not just sexual pleasure, right? Like pleasure's on a spectrum, right? And it's, you know, it's a whole
Absolutely.
spectrum of pleasure. It's for me, it's linked to the resource. So the more access I can have and the more practice I can have accessing, could be just small bits of feeling. I'm going to call it feeling good, because for a long time, people using the word pleasure made me think I didn't have access to it, but it could just be feeling good, right?
Yes.
Or it could be feeling neutral if you're not currently able to access feeling good, right? So it's just, could be one step more than where you currently are on a spectrum of pleasure, right?
Yes.
Or just feeling like the absence of pain, even. If you're someone who had pain, it could be feeling the absence of pain. That could be one step ahead, and that is perfect. So for me, it was allowing myself to have the space to access the pleasure, you know, understanding that I'm not just here to survive, and actually pleasure can be a part of an everyday part of life, which is what I never saw before. And it's like, before I was like, but what, like, it's not productive. You know, people have to think it's not productive to, why do it? It's not productive. This is much more important. But now when it comes to pleasure as medicine, it's like you build up a resource in the body you build up natural resources. Feeling good is like a resource to help you be with the challenges of life, everyday life, right? And it could be sitting down to drink your tea. It could be the sun on your skin. It could be the strawberry. It could be, you know, orgasms. It could be speaking with a friend. It could just be having a nap. It could be petting. I was going to say petting a child. It could be petting a child. It's just all those kind of like sensory experiences of that the body practices the pathways of feeling good, feeling good, feeling good, feeling good. And it shores us up to be with life, because life can be shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have access to pleasure, you kind of you're more you tend to be able to be with the challenge
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is easier, with more ease. You know, it still can be hard, but you have access to things that are good in life, which helps balance your perception of the world.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And when things are shit, you still might feel like, okay, but I still have ways of keeping myself going. I still have ways of feeling pleasure. I still have ways of being neutral. I still have. It's important to the human experience, just because it's well, I believe it's kind of like mostly why we're here, really.
Mostly what?
Why we're here. It's a big part of why we're here, I believe.
I do too. Yeah, I've been, well, I don't know, talking or writing or whatever, conveying that, pleasure is our birthright. Because I just feel like that was a new concept to me,
Mm,
you know? Oh, I see a comment here. Particularly as anyone in a body of culture, fluid body, where maybe we feel we have to deny it or somehow have to be so serious and stern. I notice I can care for myself, but not just go after pleasure and joy, because not just go after pleasure and joy, because that too is divine. Oh, yes. There's something, thank you for that comment. There's something definitely about permission. I don't know. That's another thing that's come up a lot for me, is like permission, because it's something that's not like encouraged, not conditioned. In a large sense, I'm saying conditioned. We each have our own families and own experiences, but just in a larger, even in a systemic kind of way, it's not conditioned that we experience pleasure, which is, yeah, for me, it's like pleasure is a birthright. It's divine pleasure, joy. It's a resource. And there's something in there in working with, that I've seen it in working with a lot of people and in myself, of like the permission, like it's
mm,
okay. And then the permission that comes with it, like I am worthy, I am deserving, I'm enough, I'm whole, like I can do this, I can have this experience. And like you're saying, Mina, I really agree also, like it is why we're here. We're not here in human bodies just to experience the pain, just to experience the suffering that life brings. That just can't be it. It's like a box. There's one side, there's the other side, and we're just not conditioned to focus on that, to allow that, to let it in, to have permission. These are just, the things coming through, but we're kind of life inevitably is going to bring suffering, grief, all the sadness is just going to be there. And I think to have the other experience, which we are also divinely allowed to have, and it's part of our birthright, it I think that's it, is that it takes a bit of conscious intention to bring that in. That's just what's coming through now. I don't know what your thoughts are, Rena, but it's like I feel like the other end is just gonna happen. We don't have to do anything. Just walk along in this world long enough, you're just gonna experience it.
Right. You know, it's like, okay, so you humans, you go down there and you
Yeah.
just suffer and be in pain and then you die.
I know. Like, come on, really?
Yet we have, but yet we're built to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's all of it. It's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what good is it doing us just to be in pain, suffer, and die? That's not really what I'm trying to do with my life.
Like, come on now, really? The pain, the grief, the suffering.
And you know what I want to also say, like, I
Uh-huh.
think as you call them, you call us
Yeah.
melanated beings. I love that. Um, it took me a long time. Like, I didn't understand in myself what worthy meant. I'm not sure I still do actually. Like, I see so many of these concepts, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't think I understand what that means. I think I have an understanding now. And I used to see so many, as a melanated being, I used to see so many. I see what I saw in the online space was white women who had access to pleasure and I didn't. And so I used to trigger the fuck out of me because I was just like, is this something that's not like, is this a white person something? It's not something for me, you know? Like I had so much separation.
Yes.
It was not in my awareness. And so I'm like, now it's been such a journey for me to come into an understanding of pleasure is everyone's right,
Yes.
inherent right. You know,
Yes.
it might look like that for some person, and obviously people are selling pleasure online, so it's curated, right?
Yes.
But I sort of could understand what was marketing and what was my own experience. I was like, now I'm starting to be on this journey. Now I'm starting to understand and also get rid of some of the language. You know, the thing about, pleasure could just be feeling good. It could just be feeling neutral. It could be the
Yes.
absence of pain. It just brought much more of a range of experience
Yes.
and a subtler range of experience, which wasn't just, multiple, or whatever orgasms, or the next one is cervical orgasm, and the next one they tell you should be having. It was just like feeling good, and I could have little rivers of feeling good. That multiple feeling good rivers could flow to me and start to build up
Yes.
and shore myself up to that, having that, being on that journey of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you asked a question, but
What's that?
did you ask a question?
I don't know. I think we were talking, we're really responding. Thank you, Time to Evolve, for all your comments here. And like, yes, the permission and all the things. I think it just flowed.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. And what you shared, yes, I I think I've been feeling for a while now that the space, especially online, what we see, the coaches, the online coaching, I'll just at least comment on that, that when it comes to pleasure, sex, sexuality, it is very white. And then it looks a certain way, and it's like there's different, I was learning with this teacher in this space that was mainly white, and I realize now that it's like it was missing a certain nuance, because empowerment alone, and we talk about sexual empowerment and, all this, that looks very different in a white body versus a melanated body, and how that comes across. Because if everyone is working on their empowerment, but then you already have this certain dissonance of privilege already, and then it's like I realize now, I mean, I'm grateful for the whole experience, but I realize now, gosh, that space was highly triggering. I didn't understand, I couldn't unpack it then. I couldn't, like, why did I just want to go and hide even more? Because which is the reaction I had. I was just like, ooh, I'm just gonna make myself even less seen and even less when all this empowerment was coming out.
Right, right.
Oh
Which
God.
is like, of course, like hiding is keeping you safe. So
Yes.
your body, always knows. For so long, yeah, like for a long time, trying to learn pleasure from like online white women was just like a mess. It was such a mess. And realizing that I didn't learn pleasure from my immigrant mum who had 2 jobs and 3 kids. Of course I didn't learn pleasure, but the two things that what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? There's our own my own version of pleasure that is lying underneath all of this, right?
Yes.
And me jumping over here because I see it in marketing isn't necessarily the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But going underneath, and going on that journey to find where I land.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that, yes, I didn't learn it from my mum because she was just fucking busy. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? She was busy surviving. So thank God that she did. Um,
Yeah.
and so what's underneath that? Where do we land? Where do we find our own versions? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the coaching can be great, and there's also can be layers to unpack when it kind of influences how we think we should show up.
Yeah.
And we're showing up to these, spaces as probably injured people, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Didn't have some kind of injury.
Yeah. That is a journey. That is like its own journey of like how to navigate what's coming in the space, but then kind of honor your own process, as you mentioned before. And as you're speaking, I'm curious because you had mentioned, well, in these last weeks, which led to us connecting again, you had mentioned grief, like grief was kind of calling to you, and then pleasure was also calling to. And I wonder if something, and feel free to say like you don't know or anything, but if something is coming through in terms of you and your body, like providing some support or whatever it is.
Yeah. You put me on the spot suddenly. I'm
Ah!
I'm a projector. Like I don't have any frame of like time or like
That's
I
fine.
get the idea that I'm gonna do this. And they're like, okay, I'm actually gonna no. What's coming through actually is I am a trained non-linear movement method teacher.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
Yeah.
did the first training with Michaela in 2017.
Okay.
So I've been sort of doing it for like 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And up until this year, there's a practice you can do with that, which is pleasure practice, specifically pleasure. And I've never taught it. I've never done it because I didn't feel like I wasn't there in myself.
Yes.
And now I'm like, I feel like I could teach that.
Yes.
I feel like maybe it's time, like, to teach that. And I just feel like I'm having so many gems come through about this journey of not having pleasure modeled, and like I'm ready to speak about what that journey can look like.
Mm-hmm.
And like just holding spaces for pleasure, workshops, pleasure movement practice, and even like one-on-one. I have this idea. I'm just going to say it because maybe someone might like to buy it. I have no sales page, but I want to offer these VIP days called pleasure prescriptions, and
Nice.
they're going to be like a day. I don't know how long. We could be custom, but like where we work out your own personal pleasure prescription. and you get support from me to go on that journey,
Mm-hmm.
and also Voxer access afterwards. And it also can include pleasure somatic practice.
I love it. You have to do it. That's so good.
So I mean, if anyone wants like is interested, just send me a DM
Yeah.
and we can like work it out.
Yeah.
But they're the idea is that they're tailored to you. They're
Mm-hmm.
specifically tailored to you where you're at. I'm also a trauma resolution practitioner, and so if there is trauma involved somewhere, I have some skill to be able to hold that.
Mm.
If it's within my scope of practice, we
Yeah.
can jam on that on a call or something, and then also work with the pleasure if it's something that you want us to do. So just DM me, just
Yeah.
tell me, and like
Oh,
we can like do something custom for you. I'd love to do that because I feel like it's time. It's time.
it is. It is time. I'm just saying that hearing it, it's time because I hear the opera and I'm like, yes, we need we need more people. We need more people doing this work, more people who have that experience of being in a melanated body, having
Mm-hmm.
that experience and not perhaps having this like more shiny path to pleasure that we see put out there over and over.
Right. Right. And also
Yes,
like
Star, absolutely.
absolutely, yes. And also like I just want to say, like
Yeah.
so many of the words I've seen in marketing, like I just didn't understand them. I didn't understand. So you
Yes.
can also demystify all of these words that are like, huh? Like, what is that? Or da da da, or how does that actually work with pleasure? Or why are they doing that? Why are they like what's my own personal desire for pleasure?
Yeah.
What even is pleasure?
Yeah.
How can I begin the journey? It can be you can be anywhere on the spectrum, and we can
Yeah.
like actually I can meet you where you're at, and we can talk about it and
Yeah.
create something custom for you.
I love it. Yes, it sounds so beautiful. It sounds so beautiful. And I'm just musing about my own path with this because as you very well know, because we've had so many lives this year, this thus far, I've had a 12-week program, then it was like two 6-week programs, and now I'm down to like, let's do 5 weeks. Let's like I'm trying to make it like bring the cost down and also bring it like so it's not a huge resistance to come in like 5 weeks. Let's
Yeah.
just and I'm not promising outcomes as we've communicated. I posted on. It's like I'm not gonna say you're gonna have A, B, and C happen, or because anything's really possible, and it does depend. I think with this kind of process where you are coming in, but it's about being held in it and holding any resistance, yes, trauma if that's there or what's there, so we can just kind of see like what's coming up and also have some practices to have the invitation, right, to like allow, to give permission, you know.
Mm,
Yeah, I think it's so important, however it comes, however it's coming through us. And like I've just shared, I'm being just very open. Its mine is shifted all over the place. Like, yeah, 12 weeks. It sounded like a great idea at the time. And maybe there will be a time for that, but it's like, okay, now let's make it less. And then I have just like a 1 hour offering. It's just like, let's do 1 hour. I've called it um, Become a Pleasure Pathfinder. Like, let's just do this hour, let's just see where you are, like what's coming up, and then yes, have something, offer something in there, of course, for where to lean in, like try this or try that. And again, like you say, it's like it could be something really simple,
mhm,
it could be what you eat in the morning, or a little bit of touch, just a little bit, or a foot massage or something to give, for a person to give themselves, just just to shift a little bit and allow a bit more ease, really, you know.
Mhm. Because it's all on the spectrum of pleasure, right?
Yes.
It's all on the spectrum. And for some people, it might just be not even what they eat. It could be like giving themselves time to eat something. You know,
Yeah,
like let's be real. Times are hard out here. Let's be real about that. It's true story.
it
It's a
really
true
is.
story.
It really is like a little bit of time to not inhale, like for the food to just be in your mouth a little bit,
I know.
to savor. We're coming back to food now.
I know.
Stars laughing.
I love food though, and I
Me
think
too.
it's a good one because people generally need to eat, right? So I think it's a way in. It's like an access point.
It is a good.
Um, and I was gonna say, I was just speaking. I'm like, yeah, this is also part of why I felt like so. I had no access to pleasure because the people teaching it, they were like, they seem so privileged. Like they live. I know you live in Mexico, and your whole shit is amazing. I don't live in Mexico. I live in a flat in London, so I got to do what I can. And so I'm like, right, pleasure for people that don't live in Mexico or California. That's what I'm doing. Um, but it just was like so far away from where I was. It was like, so what? Like, do I need
Yeah.
to move to the beach or
Yeah.
do I need to like? And it's like, how can I be? How can I'm? You know, that's why I'm quite passionate about it because it's like I want to meet people where they're at. You know, not all
Yes.
of us live in these hot beachy countries. I wish I did, not gonna lie. But until that time, if ever, like what can I do now?
Yes.
What can I do now with a screaming child?
Oh,
And you know, and not really much time and you know, the weather is this and that and
yeah.
maybe I haven't got budget. Like it's, you know, what where we all deserve access to pleasure
Yes.
exactly where we're at. And so that's also part of why I do this work, because it's not
Yes.
just for those people who
Yes.
can spend all day like zhuzhing around on the beach or whatever.
Pleasure isn't just for the beach. It's
It's not just for beach people.
I am also not at the beach, by the way. I am in Mexico, but I'm in central Mexico. I'm in the mountains. But
Oh,
I do
you don't
like
have
it here.
water, you have
I
mountains.
have mountains.
Oh, okay.
I'm not so privileged as to have a whole body of water, you know.
I'm just jealous, to be honest. I'm just jealous. Well gel, as they say in Essex, well gel. Um, yeah, I have like a piece of park, which is like loads of like
I
where the
see. I see your
the alcoholic
photos, your
street.
videos of a very foresty kind of place. Looks really nice, lush.
Yes. So where I live, I have
Mhm.
access to like parks and forests, and so I just go there
Yes.
and get my nest, my nature nest when I
Your
need it.
fix, yeah.
Yeah. I've been thinking actually I should do something called embodiment in the city. Embodiment
Ooh,
in the city. How to do your embodiment when you don't live near the beach or the
yes.
mountains.
You know what just came to me as you said that is urban embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of bring it into we're not at the beach. We're not at we're not in the mountains even.
I'm not in the mountains.
We're not in
I'm
some
not in the
kind of
jungle.
jungle.
I'm in my council flats. I'm in my one bed. I'm in my studio. My kids screaming. I'm sided on.
And you can still have pleasure.
But you can still have pleasure.
There we go. I think that would be a huge hit.
It's needed. It's coming. It's
It's,
coming. If anybody wants that, DM me and we can talk.
yes, yes, yes.
Uh,
There is something, I had already talked about like permission for pleasure, but there is something about like access or accessibility And like what you're speaking to, I think it's exactly it. It's just like you don't have to be anywhere. You don't need much to allow in a bit more pleasure.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think what's hard is that when you're in survival, pleasure is not a thing, you know? And so it's like honoring where people are because it's a real thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
people are really finding it tough. People are it's hard out here for people
Yeah,
and honoring that.
yeah,
And everyone, you know, it's hard because everyone's on their journey and it can be a journey to even understand why, like why pleasure, you know.
yes,
It's hard for me. I'm trying to survive. Pleasure's not a thing. And that might be the case for now. Or maybe that's how it has to be.
yeah.
Maybe it's how it has to be
Mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is any space or something happens, like, you know, and you get blown open, like, or, you know, you encounter a life-changing moment or a transition, or and then things you start to see things a bit differently. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so everyone's journey with this is so unique, and I just want to
Yes,
honor where everyone is at in
yes.
that journey.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look a certain way, and there are things that we can do if it's the right time,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the right conditions to do so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like that. It's coming to me as just like a like the call, right? Answering the call, like if as you're speaking, you know, like if there's something that's like, oh yeah, I want that. I feel like that's a you start there,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, I'm noticing that it's been like an hour and 20 minutes.
Has it? Oh my God. We always do this
we
suddenly.
always, we
It's
all,
just too good. It's just too good.
it's just,
Too good.
we need like a VIP day. I'm just
Snaps. Snaps.
Oh, I went. Did we answer the questions? Because you know, I didn't get like, I'm still working on that where people will actually ask me questions for my stories.
Oh my God. Sonali's followers, please ask Sonali questions because she can't wait to answer them for you. And it's just so fun to get questions. We love getting questions. We love. Do you want to? Is there time for people to ask questions now that are
Sure.
on the call?
Yeah.
Maybe another 10 minutes if you have 10
Sure.
minutes.
We have a couple of people, I think. We have a lot of people that have come through, but
Thanks to everyone that's dropped in. It's been so
yes.
to have you here.
Hello, Tony. Star Zen Witch. Zen with Chan. Ooh, I love that. If no one asks any here, did you have any more? Someone had asked you about grief. You have one.
Yeah. I answered it before.
You answered.
Luckily, I answered it.
Oh, Star. Thank you. Do you have a question, Star? We're
We're putting you on the spot, Star, because no one's asking questions. So can you ask one so we can answer? Thank you.
you, you commented at just the right time where we're full attention. If you'd like any input. You totally came in late. It's fine. It was long. It's been it's been an hour and 20 minutes, so it's okay.
Yeah, we just go off on one. Yeah. Any amount of time is amazing. We love to see
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate everyone that dropped. Any questions? Or
you. Well, while people are thinking, I want to hear about your I want to know about your call, your Pleasure Pathfinder call.
oh yeah. Like what that offer is. So it's so interesting because to me, of course, because like I am like just oh hi Charmaine. I'm
Hi,
just kind
Sean.
of like trying things. I just find that I'm like
Yeah.
trying different things, right? So I did this a little workshop called Erotic Embodiment, Seduction of the Melanated Spirit. And it was really cool. It was 2 hours, and it was like, because the big offering that I've been, as I've told you, offering in so many different ways is called the Pleasure Temple. And I just took little aspects of that into like a 2 hour thing. And what came from it is that people shared, not surprising, it speaks to what we've been talking about, that they felt resistance. Like when it came to the embodiment, it was a very gentle, like little practice that was in there. It's like, oh, just that it came through, just that that was hard. And this
Mm.
resistance. So I I was trying to offer something. What did I call it? Um it wasn't navigating. Oh, it was like I had the similar title, but I put the art of seducing the melanated spirit. And I wanted to like explore resistance. That
Mm.
also, it's like, it's hard to put that out there when it's like, that's what we don't, we're resistant to it. So it's like hard to jump in to be like, okay, let's go there. So then it evolved into, this is what I'm sharing, to becoming a pleasure pathfinder, because I kind of felt like I'm talking to people who are pleasure pathfinders who get to a spot where they've had that space, or they're allowing even just a little bit to like how to bring in more pleasure. So I think of it in kind of what you're saying of a meeting someone where they're at, just finding out, like I want to ask a few questions before that session to make the use of just an hour. I was trying to like
Yeah.
how I was trying to distill like how small could I go and actually have like something
Mm.
come from that. So like
Mm.
meeting someone's where they're at, and then just feeling into like kind of what we're talking about of
Yeah.
what's come up, what's getting in the way, and then offer some little things. Because I think the biggest way to work with resistance is to offer, like, do small incremental things. Small.
Small doable pieces.
Yes. Yes. Not like what we see sometimes in the coaching world of like, you know, multiple orgasmic, whatever it is. It's just like, okay, whoa, slow down. That's how I feel. I'm like, So it's that's what I'm
Mm.
envisioning. And someone did sign up for it, so I'll be interested to just kind of feel into how that goes.
Yeah. Oh, and I really want to hear about how that goes. The forays into pleasure are like
Yeah.
very juicy and exciting for me right now. So
Yeah. Yes. For me too, and especially this year when it finally, like you said, it's all about like a lot of us. A lot of it is doing our own work, right? To kind of, okay, I want to hold this because I couldn't. I wasn't holding it. I was sensuality, I was embodiment, I was kind of doing this thing. And I was also all women. And it's really like honing into, this is what I'm so passionate about. It's the melanated bodies and its pleasure, and however that looks.
and that's so potent. Like pleasure is potent, and the melanated bodies, and then together, it's like fuck me. That's like a whole volcano of potency waiting to erupt. So I'm not
Yes.
surprised it's taken you a while to get there because that's like that's a lot.
It's really been, and then it's been, as you know, like such a process of, let me put it out this way, let me do it this way. So
Mhm.
I'm just, you mentioned being a projector. We've talked about this too. I'm a Manny Gen. I'm still learning about even what that means, but
Yeah, me too, me too,
I did have a
me too.
call a couple of weeks ago with someone who calls themselves like a spiritual mentor. This Indian woman, she's amazing. And it was one of those things where during this call, it was like 40 minutes. She said, email me or human design. And it was the funniest thing. She gets the thing, she's looking at it, and she's like, "Oh, I knew you were a 1-3." And I don't know what these are. This is the profile. I I had no idea really what that was. And it turns out she's a 1-3. And it's like this investigator piece. I'm still exploring. It's like some kind of thing with investigation. And she helped me understand that's what 1-3 is are meant to do, is keep trying and keep trying and keep trying and try, just keep making little tweaks and changes and kind of allow a process to perhaps be a bit more efficient for others. But we're going to have to keep like doing it. And I thought, oh, that's definitely what this year has been. Can we try this? Okay, let me try that.
It's so what it's about. It's so what it's about, you know. It just takes a while. And congratulations to get to this point where you're able to just put it out there and then
Yeah.
pivot it and then change it. Because that takes a level of like fortification inside yourself, right? To let yourself do that publicly. It's a whole thing.
It's really a thing. And believe me, it's not easy. At some points, I'm like, nobody wants what I have to offer, And then she reflected and she goes, yeah, like when you're not quite, like you're going to just feel like people don't want what you have to offer. I was like, oh, I do feel like that sometimes. It was very validating. One of those kind of sessions that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing it.
We're doing it.
I'm doing my human design.
We're doing it. I feel like the people now are getting the after hours, like the after hours convo between the entrepreneurial bullshit chat, which we quite enjoy as well.
That's right. This is the truth. This is the honest truth of what's really going on.
Honest truth. Honest truth out here. So it's a whole mess. It's a whole mess. You don't even know.
There's no handbook, right? We don't have. I had a education and a things, like there were rules and stuff, and now I'm like, wow, no.
Did you say you had an education and a thing?
I was saying that there was a process I was following, and it had rules, and it the education was a big part of it, moving through that. And I'm not saying I loved it or anything at all, but I was, I knew what I was supposed to be doing, as what I think I'm trying to say. And now it's like, it's like there's people out there, like, and people I have like done courses from, and some I'm like, no, this isn't my way.
Yeah.
Which
is why we love it, because we get to make up the rules as we go.
We do.
Do you know what I mean? Fly by the seat of our pants and
yes,
and become more of ourselves. We learn about ourselves in this journey as well. So
yeah, that's so true. This morning I realized I miscalculated this course that I'm offering, which I'm calling, this is all, it's what comes, but it's called Rooted Rapture. And it's this 5-week, this is the one that's 5 weeks. And I was looking at the calendar this morning and I realized what I had put as the dates, that's 6 weeks. And I was like, I seriously was like, no, you are losing your mind. You couldn't even count out to get the right dates. What are you doing? So I'm like, now I have to pivot just a little bit more. Like, just, I don't know.
This is great. I love this.
It's like, it is what it is. The whole thing is I really wanted it to end on the fall equinox. And I was doing this but I think don't ask me. I think it was like 1 week and then another week and then I'm like, oh, this is 5. But it actually, I want to have 5 different sessions, so.
So we can't count is the takeaway from
that education,
this whole IG Live.
Counting to 5 has become problematic in my life. have a doctorate degree, and you know, it's just like, no. 1 to 5. 1 to 5.
Oh, life, life, life.
I got inspired because I had already put mine out there with the wrong dates, but Simone is having a 5-week thing. And then I looked, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's just like these 5 dates that she has. Oh gosh. This is what happens when you're like putting something out, but it's not fully all together figured
All
out.
together.
It's like, this is the idea of what I want to put or what I want to do, but I haven't quite figured out when and the times and all that. Oh goodness.
I'm thinking that no one is going to ask a question.
No, I don't think a question.
So, okay.
I know. We're gonna figure this out eventually. And I need to work on my game. I've seen you in your stories, but I need to I think I'm not real enough I'm okay with my post, what I post, but I don't think in the stories, this is what's come through, is that I'm not real enough, like just sharing some just day-to-day things. And it's an edge. That's an edge I'm at. Because I realize I want it a little bit pretty or something, you know?
I used to have that,
Mm.
and now I don't have that anymore.
Oh, yeah. With you were saying trauma resolution work and
Yeah.
yes.
It's just, and also I have a 3-year-old, so I don't really have time to be like that, to be honest.
You're just like, I'm in London working, a 3-year-old. I just gotta put it out there.
Do it messy. That's it. As long as they have the information, that's all I care about. Like, but yeah.
No, I love it. I'll work on
I think I might need to.
it.
As
I
lovely as this is,
understand.
and as much as I love you and all the people, and thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you for just coming in for a few minutes here and there.
I love these IG lives though. They're so good. I like that we just don't have to necessarily like have a structure.
I
Maybe people
love
don't like that, but I like that.
Yeah, I love it. Now I've had enough to know that some people they're not comfortable with it, and they want like a structure, like what is our
Mm.
topic, but I really appreciate that you and I can just go, because some of that best stuff comes at when we're like kind of done with our points or done with our.
Yeah. My mum was just trying to call me, sorry.
Oh my gosh, we should be. Oh, it's late there. What time is it? 8?
Yeah, it's 8.
Okay.
3 minutes past 8. My sound's gone weird. Okay.
Is there anything, do you feel complete? Is there anything that you want to share, or something that's coming? I really love your pleasure prescription. Yes.
Yes, that is something that's like custom, kind of one-on-one online retreat / VIP day thing where we go deep, and no matter where you are on your journey of pleasure, if you're like a sex goddess, probably I'm not the person, because that's not really where I'm at, but the part of the journey before that,
Yeah.
you're sort of like, what is pleasure? It's outside my awareness. I've tried all the things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to meet you where you're at. We can jam. we can have like a lovely session, day long session, VIP day type situation, and we can jam, and you can have your own pleasure prescription, access to me on Voxer and check-ins and stuff like that. So over time you can sort of start to bring in the pleasure that you're wanting in your mind.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
So just DM me.
Yeah. Great.
This sounds, pleasure prescription sounds like something you're interested in. DM me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds amazing.
Thank you so much, Sonali. It's been such a pleasure as always.
It's always
my pleasure today doing this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really busy day, and this was like the pleasure that I had today.
Oh, I love that. I was looking forward to it too. I knew it was gonna be so good. It's just, I'm like, I had breakfast and then I was like I'm like, wait, what are we talking about? And then I kind of thought, let's just, let's just figure it out.
As always, we just figure it out.
I love it.
Thank you to everyone who joined.
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of people who popped in here. Yes, I love it. I love it. I'll share quickly for me, again, just to wrap up, the pleasure, become Pleasure Pathfinder, like a 1-hour session, or this Rooted Rapture, which is 5 weeks, which is going to start in 2 weeks. It's on the 24th, now that I can count, because that's 24th, 31st, and then 3 Wednesdays in September. So that's those 5.
Congratulations, you can now count.
Big accomplishment. Well, I look forward to our next, whenever that is, our next encounter. We are also both friends with Casey Axoy. And one day Casey was like, oh, I had Mina on. So amazing. I'm like, yes. Our little community.
Sorry?
Our little community that's growing.
Yeah. My sound has gone mental.
Oh, no. Okay,
I just want to say,
fine.
if anyone who came on the call knows any podcasts they think I should be on, just DM me as well.
Yes.
Podcasts are fun. I like doing them.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali.
Have a good night.
It's Sonali, isn't it? I think I say it wrong.
I say it Sonali, but I never corrected it because in Mexico there's Sonali. They say it differently, and I'm kind of just used to. I do say Sonali.
I've been saying it wrong this whole time. I feel bad.
It's cute. I know it's on me. I didn't like ever say anything, and then it was like, it's fine.
I'll say it right from now on. Now that I know.
Oh, it's okay. It wasn't a bother to me. This is how I hear it here in this country. Until next time.
Until next time. Take care. It's been a pleasure. Lots of love.
Bye.